Above Ground Podcast, episode 126, The Long Run with Steve Yaciuk.
Disclaimer. The hosts of this podcast, Timothy Patrick and Will Foley, are by no means medical professionals. However, having lived experience with mental illness themselves, they have gained useful perspectives on common mental health issues that some of us struggle to overcome on a daily basis. By sharing their stories, they hope to create connection. By creating connection, they hope to help you find your purpose. And through purpose, we can all begin to build the foundation for positive mental health. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Are you ready to lace up your boots, throw up your horns, and jump into the pit? Then let's stomp the stigmas of mental illness. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now, Will Foley and Timothy Patrick.
Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to episode 126 of Above Ground Podcast, which we're going to get rolling in a moment. I just wanted to take the time to tell you about Saturday, November 20th. Saturday, November 20th is known as International Survivor of Suicide Loss Day. Every year, the Saturday right before Thanksgiving, this day is celebrated to celebrate the people who are left behind. And the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention has programs all over the country on that day. And here in the 518, we are no different. There is going to be a specific Albany, New York military and first responder International Survivor of Suicide Loss Day program at the American Red Cross on Everett Road in Albany, 33 Everett Road, from 10 to 12:30 on November 20th. There will also be other events throughout the Albany area, as well as an online offering, which I will be a part of. And you can go to afsp.org/ISOSL and find your event that you would like to go to. Sign up, register, and it's free. And I think they're very important. It's very important for survivors to feel like they're less alone. And these days, even though they're hard for people, often are beautiful days of celebration, of celebrating the lives that are left behind and being able to look back on our loved ones that we've lost. So International Survivor of Suicide Loss Day is Saturday, November 20th, and that kind of leads us into episode 126 with Steve Yaciuk. Steve is a first responder from Central New York. He is a volunteer firefighter and has been for a very long time. And he is such a good dude, and Luna, his therapy dog, is amazing. Steve was on the Channel 13 WNYT Suicide Awareness program that Tim and I were recently a part of, and Steve was one of the panel with us, and I think you'll really, really take something from his story, man. So please give it up for Steve Yaciuk. It's time for The Long Run.
Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Above Ground Podcast interviews. Are you down with TPP?
Yeah, you know me.
Good morning, Timmy. What's up, buddy?
The usual.
Oh boy, Timmy's got a case of the days.
We're trucking. We're trucking. We have bad days. We have good days. Sometimes we're weak and we let our expectations come into the mix. So just trying to stay focused, trying to stay mindful. And I am excited today, though, because we are here on Zoom, which means another interview.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And we have a really good one this morning. We are joined by someone that we met recently. If you have been around the 518 in the last month or two, recently, Tim and I and our guest today, as well as Dan Egan, who was a guest on a past podcast. And I wish I'd looked up the episode number because I can't remember, but I'll put it in the show notes. We're a panel on Channel 13, along with Kim Buchanan, who is also a volunteer for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, with Channel 13, WNYT. Jerry Gressinger sat us down for an hour, and we had a panel discussion about suicide and suicide prevention and what to look for, and just talking about our stories. And we met this gentleman there, and this gentleman Is a Central New York volunteer firefighter and has been since 1982. Timmy, I was 10 years old when Steve started volunteer firefighting, man.
I was 6.
We are joined today by Steve, Yaciuk, and Luna.
And Luna.
and Luna.
Steve is also a mental health advocate and a suicide prevention advocate. I'll throw in there because he's pretty outspoken about it, which we like here at Above Ground Podcast. And he fits right in. He's a good guy. And welcome, Steve.
Yeah, welcome, Steve.
Thank
Good
you.
morning. You're very welcome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. You got my last name right, so you get 10,000 points for that.
All right.
Don't matter in this game, though.
Well, it's Steve. Thank you very much for joining us, man. Let's just start with where you're a mental health advocate for first responders in Central New York, and I know you have quite the story when it comes to that. So why don't we start there? Why don't we start where your crisis comes in and now your thriving comes from?
I have a background of employee assistance program, and believe it or not, I've taken lots of suicide prevention classes through being a coordinator. And I'm just sharing that with you because it could have put me into a position when I was in a bad place in 2015. I had it. I was done no matter what. I was just gonna, end it. Nothing was working. Nothing was working out for me. I just got out of a second marriage. We married for what we thought was the right reason, but it ended up coming to bite us in our butt. And I couldn't do anything right. I was promoted to a position out in Rochester, and that job did not work out. So I came back to the Syracuse area, and I was really, really down, man. I mean, I was down big time. I got a hold of a friend, and I told them I was coming back. And if you remember in the panel discussion, I had mentioned, if you tell someone you're available 24/7, make sure you're available 24/7. I was reaching out to this person, and I was not getting any responses from them. And I said, that's it. If I'm not worth what they're telling me that I'm worth, I'm done. I already wrote my obituary, suicide note, and I went into the bedroom. I was going to do it by gun, and I was ready. At this particular point in time in my life with my service dog, she would sleep in a recliner. She wouldn't come to bed with me. This was a transition period. I got her in January of 2015. This was around August of 2015, and we were still trying to figure each other out. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into a service dog program. I could explain that some other time to you guys because it will take a long time to explain that. For some reason, she sensed something was going on, and try not to get too emotional. She sensed something was going on, so she jumped out of the comfortable recliner and she came into the bedroom, and she literally just laid right across me. She knocked me into, laying down on the bed because I was ready to go. And she just laid right across me, and she wouldn't let me move. Now, she's only 55 pounds. I'm over 200 pounds. I couldn't move her. Just the way she positioned herself, I could not move her. I kept trying to push her. She kept moving back. I think at one point, she kind of gently grabbed my hand and squeezed it with her mouth, saying, hey, you're not going anywhere. And at that point, I am kind of spiritual, not to offend anyone. And I had a moment, and that moment was, hey, I'm not done with you. I still have a purpose for you. I was starting to scream. I wasn't screaming loud enough to get the neighbor to come down and check on me, but I was screaming, like, why? Why can't I just go? I'm in so much pain. An awakened moment for me. I eventually fell asleep. She stayed by my side the whole night, which was really unusual at that particular point in time. I'm just trying to calm my emotions. And since that day, I just constantly ask myself, what's my purpose? And here I am, trudging through whatever it is that I need to do. I decided that, mental health would be of that purpose, but I didn't realize how serious first responders' mental health issues were. And it's serious. The line of duty death is lower than the suicide rate among firefighters, first responders. And it's really sad. Part of the reason, I believe, is because firefighters are afraid to be vulnerable. Vulnerable is a sign of weakness, according to certain people. I had mentioned to you guys before, I've been, listening to Brene Brown. Hopefully someday I'll be on her show. She talks about vulnerability, and it's not being weak. It's being courageous, being brave. It's being strong. It's your story. Own up to it. Don't be afraid of what other people think. I just started stepping up. I made a lot of people uncomfortable. In the fire service, they don't like to hear people, or first responders saying, yeah, I thought of suicide, or I attempted and I wasn't successful. We're portrayed as people that need to be strong. And that conception, it's good when you're on a fire call, but in your personal life, you need to start taking care of yourself. You need to start dealing with what you're facing, those past incidents. You can't deny them. You can't run from them. Because the more you do that, the more it's going to catch up with you. This is in 2015 when I attempted. In 1988 was one of the worst calls that I've ever been to. I've been to worse calls after that, and I've been to some bad calls prior to that. But in 1988, there was a fatal fire in Spring Valley where I started out. 3 kids and their grandmother were killed. And a lot of the firefighters have tried so hard to get into the house to get these kids out and the grandmother out. Unfortunately, the homeowner was told that he was violating the code and the house was packed with people. They did say at one point they thought the smoke detector went off, but we're not sure. One of the kids, unfortunately, was in the front window, fell through, I believe, and it was a gruesome sight that I'll never forget. I do remember a lot of the stuff that happened that day. I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to gross people out. But I carried that for over 30 years. I blame myself for that kid dying. I was pro fire prevention, fire safety education. I believe, if we could prevent a fire, we would save lives. And here I am, I failed this kid. Even though there was hundreds of firefighters there, I took all that on myself. And in 2019, I decided to go. Actually, before that, I tried out EMDR, and that therapist didn't work out for me. And I kept hearing this voice in my head, try something else, hang in there, try something else. So I went to a organization that's well known in Central New York for therapists and social workers, and they had an EMDR guy. His first name is Gary, and he had helped me through a lot of this stuff. And then at the end of this one session, I was ugly crying. He's like, you could let her go now. Let her go. You did the best you could. And I said out loud to him that I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. And I'm sharing that with you because this is part of a therapy that I think helps people with post-traumatic stress, which a lot of first responders probably have. And that's where, I started the healing process. But prior to that, I was on a journey trying to tell people, and like I said at the panel discussion, I am referred to as the Grim Reaper because I've talked about cancer prevention for firefighters and cancer. I've talked about mental health numerous of times. I even said to the guys at these meetings that I am, a suicide attempt survivor, and it's got to be taken serious. And for some reason, I just think they don't want to deal with it, or they just want to brush it aside and put their happy faces on. And it's really serious. I just mentioned, during pre-talk that, a 24-year-old just took her life, female firefighter. And that really adds the flame to, my passion. I am lost currently trying to figure out how to get in to where we can do something like a peer support thing in New York State or something similar to that. There are a couple of people in New York State that go around and share their stories. They're first responders. I want to connect with a couple of them. If they hear me on this podcast, you guys got my permission to give them my email. I'll give you guys my email later in an email or something like that. Because I want to reach out and get something going. Because if I could save one person or even more, then those people will be able to, as I said at the panel discussion, attend the special events that are coming up. Like my daughter's wedding. I wouldn't be there for it. And, now that I think about it, I'm like, wow, I'm glad that it didn't go through. But yet, I still deal with some residual stuff from that attempt. And we've talked about that before as well. That's basically that part in a nutshell.
Steve, that it takes a lot of strength to be able to go through all of that and come out the other side, man, and still be here. So I congratulate you wholeheartedly and sincerely, man, because there's, that's a hell of a battle to carry through, man.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you for sharing it with us and allowing that, allowing our listeners to hear it. These are stories that, as you always say, especially with, first responders, firefighters that aren't really in the line of view. We don't talk about them enough. So it's a good thing,
And to put it out there openly too, man, we're always open. Tim and I are always open to the discussion. So if whoever these people are that Steve is talking about, you reach out, man, we'd love to have you on too, to talk. You got an open forum here. Cause we have, we all know someone who's a first responder. I think I know several firefighters and stuff and police officers. So it's not like we don't have anybody that's around us that we don't know. Steve, I kind of wanted to kind of just see, I know you're very happy about being here for your daughter's wedding and that's such a great moment that you can celebrate. And I know in my own personal struggles that was a big reason why I didn't follow through because of the lasting legacy that we leave behind when something like this happens. What do you think is the first thing that we can do to help first responders open the door? Like, where's the bridge in there? Where can we help? How can you help? Like, what's the first door we can open for that?
That's a great question. I would have to say stop being very judgmental of people as a first responder, as a firefighter. I know from talking to my fire chiefs, current and past, that they sometimes are overwhelmed with the training mandates and everything, that they have a tendency to not overlook, but have a tendency not to focus so much on the health of the individuals in the fire department. I also know that my story, when I knocked on a door at 18 years old and said, I want to join the fire department, I already had a lot of junk in my bucket, if you know what I mean. There was a lot of warm fuzzies in there. I was already sexually abused. I was already physically abused, mentally abused. I was bullied all my life because of my hearing disability. And I was looking to help people to make myself feel good. And I think that's why a lot of people want to help out as first responders, especially volunteers. I came knocking on the door and I said, hey, I want to join. But these guys knew me for quite some time. They weren't sure how they could handle my hearing disability. And I can't blame them for thinking that. But I've gone beyond that. I've proved myself to them. But the biggest thing is coming into that door, the expectation level is way high. And back then, and I'm not trying to knock any fire department or anyone particularly or personally, but back then, fire departments were a social organization with good intents to help the community, but they also did a lot of drinking. I came from some alcoholism in my past. They were so manly men. They didn't show any emotions. They would rather drink away things. I was wondering why they were drinking instead of talking about it, because we did have a debriefing at that time. The debriefing thing, which started in and up back then. I couldn't be part of it because I was told by my supervisor that I would be fired if I didn't plow that particular night. And that really bothered me. But I knew debriefing was there. Maybe if had I been debriefed, maybe I could have dealt with it better. I have no clue. It just didn't happen. But I was just trying to figure out why these guys were drinking all the time. And I met a couple other firefighters, and they were struggling with things, so they wanted to drink. And now I finally got why they were doing it. And later in life, I attended some open AA meetings, Al-Anon meetings, for various reasons. And I learned, because there were a couple of firefighters at those meetings talking about their struggles and why they had to have that drink and why they're starting to dry up. And it was interesting to see how firefighters don't like to be vulnerable. They don't like to come out and say, hey, I had a bad fire. I can't cope with it right now. Can you help me? Taking that a little bit step further, how can we help? The peer support thing would be great because I'm in the Syracuse area. If I'm struggling with something, I'll call a guy out in Western New York who doesn't know me and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. Can you help me? Peer supporters, and what I'm thinking of, would have resources for these people to contact so that they can get help. And that's the first start right there. Is a firefighter coming down and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. I need help. Guide me. And you keep it confidential. You keep it under the wrap. You keep it behind the scenes, unless it's serious, where the actual person is definitely going to, attempt or contemplate, and then you as a peer supporter think that you need to step it up. That's where the training came in for me, to know that as a first responder, we're mandated reporters. We have to report no matter what. If we think someone's going to hurt themselves, we immediately got to do something. We just can't say, well, let's see how this goes. And we all know that. So we can help each other out, understanding that lingo and that requirement, and maybe save some lives or help these people get through their difficult time. The other thing was that I was an EAP coordinator and I had training in suicide. This was before 2015. That's how dark my place was. I'm really being vulnerable telling you that I failed. It was a failure that was a successful failure, as I put on Facebook a while back, because I'm still alive. You know what I'm saying? I remember you had a podcast and you talked about failure. It can be good or it could be bad. I try to look at failure as a good thing now. Back then, at that dark moment, I felt like a failure. But I learned to twist that around and say, I'm not a failure. I failed at that, or I failed at this, rather than letting that whole situation become my identity. And thanks to you guys, people hear that, they get onto it.
Yeah, that's right, man. Fail forward. And I that's a concept that Tim and I have been discussing over and off and on the last couple of years since I had heard about it, because it's just a reframing of the idea of what learning is. But I kind of wanted to go back to where you were, because I heard so much in that conversation about how you, like when we started to talk about opening the door and how you walked into that fire department at 18 and there was all these expectations. And I wanted to ask you this as a first responder, because do you think that by glorifying things the way we do with TV shows and stuff, do you think we amplify the expectations that are put on our first responders to be these completely, like superheroes, as a matter of fact, like that they can't be vulnerable? Like it's almost, there's almost such a stigma about that they have to be so strong because we put such a spotlight on what they do, with all the shows and stuff. Now, I'm saying culture does it with everything, but do you think that actually adds to the expectations that a lot of these younger kids aren't expecting?
Yeah, I think so. I do recall back when I was in Rockland County and I was a member of a couple of fire departments down there. There was a guy that came in and we had a bad call. He said, I'm done. I said, I don't know how you guys handle this, but I'm done. And we do glorify it. We do say, yeah, we're the heroes and we're macho and all that. there are expectations, and there are high expectations back then. Not so much today. And I take on that myself. If someone walks into the door and says, "Hey, what should we expect if we join?" And I'm involved with that, I'll let them know. There's going to be some days you're going to really see some really, really bad stuff. Just let you know
That's
you're not
that's
alone.
exactly what I was just going to say, like, because you had talked about peer group or peer support like that. Is there something that maybe even you can start up, like an introductory program to volunteer firefighting, and have it be like a like a 2-week class, like 2 or 3 times a week, 2 or 3 days out of the week, where you could bring this stuff to everyone's attention and talk about overall what you will be experiencing.
They try to touch on that in their initial training, according to what the state fire instructors have told me. I don't think they do, because I've asked a couple of new recruits after they've dealt with stuff, after they've taken their class, have they talked about this? Some of them will say, yeah, in a way. Some of them will say no. I would love to do it. If these people are not listening to me, or, for example, I made a few phone calls. This is God honest truth. I made a few phone calls to someone in the emergency management department. I won't tell you what county it is, because I don't want them to get into trouble or scolded at, and I don't want to badmouth the service. And I said to him, where do we stand with this? And this was just debriefing. This wasn't peer support. This was debriefing. We got to get this started first before we can do this. And in some ways, we really need the peer support before we need debriefing. So it's a gamble there, which way we're going to go. And we're working on it. Then I recently called back after, unfortunately, there was a suicide in one of the fire departments in this county. And I called back about a few weeks later after the dust settled, and I said, where are we with this? Oh, we're still working on this part of it. Or we're still working with these people. I was literally pissed off. Literally. I'm like, this is like the second or third one we had in this particular county, and that's just where you're going with it? And I'm willing to volunteer. I'm willing to give you my time. Oh, well, people are making excuses for other people. And there's a retired fire coordinator from another county that I used to be a member of, and he would tell me debriefing is for, BS. And I looked at him and I said, really? Go back to being an EAP coordinator? We had a real bad accident. No, I'm sorry. We had a medical emergency at one of the residencies. DOT's got lots of shops throughout the central New York area. And I was an EAP coordinator there. I showed up. And I just showed up. I had my EAP shirt on. I just showed up. People knew who I was. And 2 days later, we went back, to see where the guys were at. And some of them were telling me the stories. The actual people that were involved and the people that were outside watching. And one guy walked up to me, he goes, thanks for showing up on the day of the event. Your presence made a difference to me. I don't know about everyone else. So I try to explain that to some of these, excuse my expression, bullheaded, hard-headed firefighters, that a presence of someone from your peer support group may make a big difference for one individual. And that's all that matters to me. I don't know what matters to you. I don't need 10 guys coming up to me saying, hey, this and that. I just need that one guy realizing that he matters because you called the peer support group to your firehouse. And it blows my mind, because these are the same people that look at the safety records and don't want a firefighter to get hurt, don't want a firefighter to get killed physically, but they don't care about the mental health. I'm getting fired up here. I apologize. But
No, it's okay. It's okay. Do you think that if you could maybe talk to somebody either in a surrounding county or where you are, maybe, and get a room, like if there's an extra, I know some of those places have different rooms, whether they rent them out for outside birthday parties or events. But if you could get a room, hey, I'm Steve. This is a flyer. I'm going to put it on Facebook. I'm going to put it out on social media, and we're meeting Wednesday night at 7. And you can come and we can talk about things, and we can talk about if you're starting being a volunteer through the firehouse and we can go over things, like anything's on the table. I mean, do you think something like that would be beneficial?
I'm going to ask my chief now that you mentioned that, because I had mentioned to my current chief that I wanted to do something in the county that I'm in, and he said I got to get a hold of the fire coordinator. With COVID and all the protocols coming through, they're really overwhelmed. And I said, I get it, but just get me a meeting with him. And, I'm sorry, he's going to try to get a meeting with him, with me, or he's going to do a meeting with him and mention my name. So I've got an opportunity to talk to him again. I will mention this. I also, with your permission, will post this on my Facebook page. I've had a couple of people that are not firefighters listen to the panel discussion, and they were really proud of me. They were impressed with my vulnerability. They didn't think I could do something like that. And I am, I was bouncing off the walls, listening to the panel discussions, and I didn't realize at that point, Luna's over here saying, hey, what's going on here? We were talking, about the possibility of me being vulnerable to the point to where things would happen. The passion would be there. I know I got a little off track. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that no, it's okay. I think that, you had mentioned before about like where to start. I think that's a perfect place to start. And I think what, I don't know, this might just be from my perspective, but I think one thing that becomes a barrier is the walls that everybody else puts up, and that they don't, they may say they care about safety. They may say they care about mental health, and some days it feels like that no one wants to help. And for peer support, and I'm sure Will would back me up on this, it's pure thankless, and there's not much support for peer support. So it's like you kind of just have to jump in and try it and just do it. I mean, we've had plenty of nights where we have had our peer group and it's just Will and I, and no one shows up, and you can either beat yourself up, or you can just say, well, I'm going to continue to put this out there and just do what I can do the best I can at this moment.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in real quick, Steve, because I do want to get to more of your stuff. Peer support, I think, is one of the most important things there is, and it's very hard to get people to come out a lot of times to peer group, and it is a thankless job sometimes, and it's hard to keep. And it's also hard to keep your certifications if you're not actually in the field, because like I have to I don't even think I did enough of my continuing education hours this year yet, and I have another year of my certification before I have to do something with it, or they're going to take it away from me. So, or I have to go through all the classes again, which I probably would anyway, just to keep it, if I was just to have it, but because I like it. But it's a difficult thing, but I want to scream from the rooftops that it is so important to know that other people experience the same things you experience. Mental health is not separate from physical health. Mental health is physical health is mental health. Remember that, people. But Steve, I second with Timmy. I think dude, your ideas are great. And if we can help, if there's anybody out there, if we can put you back in touch with Gara, as far as, because he's obviously, as far as part of the suicide prevention center in New York, man, he's got a lot of connections too. So they might be able to set some stuff up. I'm going to try to find some resources also. I have several friends who are firefighters here in Albany, in the Albany area. And I know that there's been some deaths there recently also. I know they've lost some firefighters recently. So I'm going to try to reach out to some of my contacts and see if there's anything I can find out. But I'm so happy that you're here, you've stayed, and that you are on your purpose. And I got to ask you this: does this new purpose, what has this new purpose given you?
It's made people hate me. Like Carl said, haters are going to hate on your show, Carl Waggett. And I'm not afraid to be hated anymore. It's given me strength. given me strength to shine the light on the dark stuff. People run from the stuff because they don't understand it. If you guys continue to do what you're doing and I continue to do what I'm doing, it won't be so dark anymore. It'll be in the light. It'll be okay. This is reality. Let's face it. Mental health, mental illnesses. Let's get help when we need it. My purpose has given me more awareness of mental health issues, mental illnesses. I don't really know what to say because there's so much stuff going on in my head right now. But the one big thing is that, there are days that I'm not happy. Obviously, that's life. But on those unhappy days, I always try to find something to strive for. I guess that makes sense. Like I was telling you guys earlier, it's raining like crazy here. It's been raining for the past 2 days. Can't go outside. There are other things I can do to help me stay content in the moment. I also noticed that coming out with my story, I didn't do it to myself, but I feel more isolated. Because people don't know how to handle people who are vulnerable. And I try to use what Rob has said on one of your programs, the first responder, and Carl has said, is, just keep doing what you're doing, keep shining. Eventually people are going to get a hold of you and start, texting you and start seeing what you're up to. I'm usually the person that checks on people. And there's been a few people currently in my life that have been struggling. And I just make sure that they know I'm there. And my job is done. I tell them you're not alone. I tell them, if you need to talk, I'm available. I make sure I let them know I'm not available 24/7. I will get back to them as soon as I can. I think that's becoming more of my purpose. I don't know what the future holds for me at this point. I was thinking about retiring, but I bought this house that I'm currently in right now, so I'm going to not be able to retire for a couple more years. But where I'm living, I may get a shot to do peer support, and hopefully it might grow from there.
Well, whatever we can do to support that, man, whatever we can do to support that here at Above Ground Podcast, man, we'll be more than happy to. We'll even help you, we can help you in any way, get something set up or whatever, like I said, that would be awesome. I know that time is very valuable, my friend, and I just kind of wanted to, I know this has probably been it's been pretty intense time for you, man. You've been able to share your story a few times now and stuff. And I kind of wanted to wrap things up a little bit and just ask Timmy if there was anything else Timmy wanted to ask before we kind of get it into the lightning round.
No, just thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, at Above Ground Podcast, and just thank you for doing what you do. And just, again, just continue to do it. It's, it's a tough road. And on top of that tough road, we're also healing on top of that ourselves. So, you know what I mean? We're on the path of healing. We're on the path of helping, and, your mission and your purpose. And I think it all ties into one. I think, to second guess it is kind of a waste of time and silly. I think you're doing it. I think, you may not see the results, you may not feel like it, but, you're helping people, and you're doing your part just by doing this and talking like we are. We may not have 1,000 listeners or 1 million listeners, but, if one person listens, then we did it,
Yeah, help us spread the message, everybody.
Going.
Yeah, help us spread the message, everybody. Share if if you've heard something, man, tag us, share it, do whatever you can. But Steve, we appreciate so much you being here, man. So we finish up every episode with the 3 questions. Timmy?
Do you have a favorite or a least favorite word?
I've listened to several of your podcasts, and I've listened to people give you words and stuff like that. Honestly, don't think I have a favorite or least favorite word, but I'd like to touch on the word vulnerability. It could either go against you or it could go for you. And I like to think that it goes for you.
Nice, well said.
With mental health, mental illness, I would I would say vulnerability. I'm okay with being vulnerable.
Is there something that you can kind of sum up quickly about vulnerability that to help make it work for you, or what you do that makes it work for you?
I'm not afraid anymore of what people think of me.
That's a good freedom to have.
Yeah. That's the best way I can sum that up for now, Tim.
Okay.
I like it, man. I like it very much. That's very cool. So you know what the next question is coming. So I've kind of changed this question around a little bit because I've noticed that there's a difference between spirit animals and the animals that we love in our personal lives. So I'm going to open this up to, do you have a spirit animal, a personal animal love, and is it a cat, dog, or other? And I already know what this answer is going to be because we've all seen the beautiful Luna. So,
well, you talk about spirit animal. I'm going to throw you a curveball. I love dragonflies. I love what they represent.
Wow. Okay.
Curveball.
That is a curveball.
I like dragonflies. It's thought that when you see a dragonfly, even a cardinal or something like that, someone from the past is thinking of you. But for some reason, I just love the peace and tranquility that dragonflies offer. Because you always see them around bodies of water. And I like the water. I like the lake. I like the ocean. Definitely Lunar is my dog. I've had a family member ask me one time, "You prefer cats or dogs?" I said, "Definitely dogs." But I've had a few cool cats in my life. One of my friends, unfortunately, had to put her cat down, and he was really cool. I'm not a real cat fan, but this cat was really, really cool. And it's ironic that its name is Smokey. Here I am, a volunteer firefighter. I like the cat named Smokey.
All right. Well, the last question would be, if there was something that you would like to see done, or if there's something that you could do for mental health as a whole without any kind of restraint, what would it be?
Peer support for first responders, firefighters. Peer support right off the bat. No doubts, no ifs, ands, or buts.
To the point.
So you're
right to the point.
So I just want to sum this up really quick. So that means if it's like right from the start, then that means it would be built into the education of a volunteer firefighter. And personally to me, it actually sounds like a win-win because you're giving these individuals something else that they can count on for giving their time to donating to the community, because without our volunteer firefighters, man, many people would lose their houses. So we have to support all these young individuals, these young men and women and older men and women, all from all walks of life, volunteer and they devote their time and they want to be part of the solution. They're not out there causing the problems. They're out there fighting fires in your community. And that goes for all firefighters and stuff. Anyway, but Steve, thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. It's been amazing meeting you. It was so great to be part of that panel and the friendships now that we have and forged, and that we're going to be able to keep further and on through our connections here on Above Ground Podcast. We're going to be out in the community soon. I'm not sure when this episode is actually. Your episode's going to be in about a month. So by the time you hear this episode, we'll should be getting close to the upstate punk rock flea market, which I think Timmy and I will be at with a community table of resources. So if anybody's out there at that, we'll be there, I'm hoping. So, but thank you, Steve Yaciuk. Steve Yacht Rock Yaciuk.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, and keep doing what you're doing. Like I said, I've listened to some of your podcasts, and they're really, really good to listen to. They're really good resources for people going through this unfortunate, mental health battles and illnesses and suicide and stuff like that. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I really admire you guys. And hopefully we'll keep in touch as time goes on.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. We're friends now. You're part of the family now. And you're pretty local. We're really trying to open up the door to more people in the 518 and in central New York and even Western New York, man. New York is a big state. It's So I open the door to anybody out there who hears this that is in our state that can offer information about anything within the mental health system. We would love to have a conversation with you if you email us at abovegroundpodcast@gmail.com. Timmy, another awesome interview, man. So until next time, we're going to wrap it up. Be well.
Be safe.
Be
Be
above.
above.
Oh boy.